Welcome into Training Camp Live, presented by Publix. Casey Phillips and Scott Smith here with you. We are back at Advent Health Training Center after our scrimmage at Raymond James Stadium Friday. Then the players got a day off on Saturday, and they are back in action today. We have so much to talk to you about from that scrimmage. I felt like that was a really helpful thing to just see how some of the guys were doing. You know, we're definitely not allowed to report on a whole lot of the details. They wanted it to remain, pretty locked down because they were going to be doing a lot more game scenarios and true game plays and that kind of thing. So we will have to be a little bit more vague than we would with just a normal practice, but there was still a lot that came out of it that was really exciting. Before we get into that, let's go ahead and check out our Frontier play of the day from the scrimmage. All right, so let's talk a little bit about that scrimmage. There was a guy named Tom Brady that played in it. I heard that we should maybe talk about him. He's kind of good at this football thing. What did you feel like you saw from the reps, especially from him, that he was able to get, and just his performance overall?
Well, in an extremely surprising bit of reporting here, I'm going to tell you that Tom Brady was good at playing football in live tackling, live action. Really, honestly, nobody expected, obviously, Tom Brady to have any difficulties in that scrimmage. And we do have to acknowledge that it was first-team offense against second-team defense and vice versa. But the first time he got his hands on the ball, the first-team defense had gone first. The ball was punted down to the 2-yard line, so great job, Bradley Pinion. And so he's coming out. It's one of those coming-out drills, which they were glad they got that opportunity to do. And all they did was go 98 yards on 16 plays. And he was
no big deal.
Yeah, he was very, very sharp. He spread it around a lot, and one of the things that Bruce Arians was talking about afterwards, not just the physical play, that all the passes were on target, as we've been talking about, but he really had good command, and he had to deal with that crowd noise that was being piped in. He had good command of the defense, of the offense. He had great command of the clock. They never came close to running out on the 25 or 45-second clock. And, like I said, he was on target, and there was at least, there was some intermediate stuff. There was a little bit of deep stuff, and as you can see here, Tom Brady is good at that. Over the last 6 years, he leads the league in completion percentage on balls thrown 10 yards or farther. And another name on there is Drew Brees. You're going to see a little bit of that. That was Tom Brady's first work in a live game type situation for the Buccaneers, but the first real game is going to be against Drew Brees, and just seeing that just kind of got you more excited for that incredible matchup of the two leading passers of all time, which we are now, 2 weeks away from to the day.
Man, that is exciting to hear you say even. That's awesome. And yeah, I don't even remember that today is Sunday. And you're right, 2 weeks from now, we will have real football on Sunday. And I think that graphic was so important to talk about, because I think Brady does somehow get this reputation of really being this short passer guy, that it's, to these running backs and, in the flat.
Well, he is very good at that.
Which he is very good at. But I think that that's really important to show that he is also incredible at longer passes, deep balls, that kind of thing. And I think that that's something that we have seen that Bruce Arians loved, and we wondered how that would gel with what Brady
his passer rating last year, if you cut the field into 9 areas, short, intermediate, deep, and then middle, right, and left, he was good at all of them. But his passer rating was above average on 2 of those 3 deep zones and average on the other zone. So he had no problem throwing the deep ball. It's a true statement that the Patriots didn't throw the ball deep very much at all. And he's 43 years old and they don't throw the ball deep. So you're like, there's questions, like Drew Brees isn't throwing the ball deep as much anymore. But now he's teamed up with Bruce Arians, and Bruce Arians likes to throw a little bit deep. They're going to have it more often than anybody else really in the NFL last year. There's going to be a collaboration. There's going to be a mix of those two styles. And that's what we saw on Sunday. Without getting too much into the strategy of it, we saw that mix. Here's another thing. The highest graded quarterback, when you take the regular season and playoffs together, and of course Tom Brady's played so many playoff games, it's like a couple extra seasons.
He probably has enough playoff games to count for whatever other people's qualified games in the regular season.
I would imagine that Tom Brady has played more playoff games than maybe more than Patrick Mahomes has played regular season games.
Yeah, that would be an interesting stat to look at. That's incredible.
As you see there, once again, I wanted to point out, first on that list, Tom Brady. Second on that list, Drew Brees. I mean, it's got to be one of the marquee matchups of Week 1 in the NFL. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of attention on that game.
That is going to be awesome. And we had talked about in previous shows the fact that the Saints have already announced they wouldn't have fans for that game, and we talked about the idea of the piped-in crowd noise, and we did get to experience that during the scrimmage a little bit, and Brady addressed that and how that affected him and the rest of the team. So what do you think that you learned about the way that could potentially look or affect a team, and how that could change things maybe?
I got to imagine they're still working the kinks out on that. We've heard that every team, you can pipe in up to 85 decibels of noise. Didn't know how loud that was going to be. That was pretty loud.
It was.
And the weird part about it that you have trouble getting used to is it was just no ebb and flow. It just was constant wall of noise the entire time they're out there, when they were in the huddle, between plays, during plays, offense, defense, because supposedly if you pipe in noise, you have to do it the same for both sides. So Tom said, it was unusual, and you had to be yelling pretty much the entire time, even on the sideline. And you don't think about these kind of things, but a lot of people you're trying to talk to on the sideline are wearing masks. Mm-hmm. And he's used to, in those times when you have to yell, sometimes somebody will get his attention, Tom, and he'll turn to look.
And he doesn't know who's talking to him.
Yeah, normally he could tell that guy's talking to him, and if he catches a little bit, he can also do a little bit of lip reading and get an idea of what they want. You hear Tom, you turn around, you don't know who is yelling at you, and even if you have the right person, you don't have the advantage of reading their lips, so they have to communicate by being loud enough, and and of course this isn't just Tom, everybody has to deal with this. I'm just explaining, if they do that, it's going to be very unusual. And then I believe I've heard, but who knows if it'll be the case once we get to the regular season, that if you do have fans in the stand, you don't use piped-in noise. So basically what the Bucs were practicing for tomorrow could just be for road games if we do have fans in the stands.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Outside of Brady's performance, I know in the next segment we're going to talk about the wide receivers and who's vying for those 3, 4, 5 receiver spots, and we're also going to talk about the outside linebacker depth. But outside of those two positions, what were some of the other positions or people you felt like you learned something about in the scrimmage?
Well, just overall, the first team defense looked very stout. They didn't have a whole lot of problem. Blaine Gabbert and his crew, they had the tough task of going up against that defense, and they didn't. I don't believe the second team offense scored. The first team offense scored 3 touchdowns. We saw, since we showed the play, we can confirm that Ronald Jones had one of them, right? Mm-hmm. But I believe they scored 3 times, and this first team defense really was pretty stingy. Gave up a couple first downs, as Bruce Arians said, but then pretty much locked it down. It was pretty tough sledding trying to run against that group, which is what you would expect. So, again, we can't get too much into the details, but the first team defense looked ready to go, at least. But again, they're playing the second team offense, so take it with a grain of salt.
Right.
We also had a couple, the flip side of live tackling, which you don't want to go into the season having never had live tackling, so they've had a bit more of it here in training camp, but also that was pretty much live game atmosphere. Mm-hmm. You don't want your first live game atmosphere experience to be on the Saints on the 13th, so you kind of feel like you have to do that at least once. But the flip side of that is guys can get hurt. Guys can get hurt in non-contact as well, but there's a higher chance of a guy getting hurt with the tackling. And we did finish the mock game with Carlton Davis and Ronald Jones both sidelined. The good news is, at least probably, that Bruce Arians said he doesn't believe either one's serious. So if you get out of that game without any injuries that affect the regular season, then it was a pretty positive experience all around.
Yeah, that would absolutely be a win to get the guys ready for that live tackling, ready for all of that without any major injuries. That would be really big. Okay, well, again, we are going to be talking about the wide receiver position, the outside linebacker position, and some more takeaways from that scrimmage in our next segment. And in the final segment, we're going to be taking your questions, so make sure you submit those on YouTube and on Facebook so that we can find those. For now, we're going to go to a few of those scrimmage highlights for you guys to enjoy.
Yeah, what it do?
Guys, just practicing my blocks. Ready? What do you mean?
How many yards you think? If I was your quarterback.
Oh, like right now? Probably get like 400.
That's it?
Yeah.
It ain't gonna be me. It's gonna be you then. I'm gonna put that money.
All right, then.
Bang right there.
Nah, I'll go with 500.
Y'all need a quarter route.
500.
Bang right there.
500 yards.
500. I'm thinking about the thousands. What's the most you ever had?
1,300.
That might be me.
Oh, if you were my quarterback?
No, 1100.
1,100? I would have 1,100, yeah.
Yeah, man.
We need it. We need it. The breeze feels good. Oh, Juice, we just went non-stop, man. Yeah, that period was just hard, too. It's all right, we got it. We got to stay positive, though, man. So we can't, just staying negative is just going to make it worse. So we probably got the hardest part down. Oh, we got, yeah, and then you psych yourself out. Let's go. Keep our bodies loose. Think about a loose body. Yeah, let's talk it out. Big time. We're going to talk it out for life.
Yeah.
I turned around, and there was the ball. Oh, Blitz hot. Oh, he saw it. He was not hot. My ball. Yeah, baby. I'm like a running back out of the backfield. Thank you. That's 12 yards. I was going to get tackled. There's 3 guys.
I know, but that's good.
I'll take 12. Yeah, baby. 12 yards, baby. First down that was. You saw that? At first, I was running in that D lineman was looking at me. I was like, oh. Slipped right by him, caught. I got about 12. I was going to get tackled. There's 4 guys coming, but I got 12. Oh, I'm coming out with my move. Hey, scream! I'm fried right now, dude. I've been running so much. Oh! Cody, that was for you. Nah, I got tackled, but I got some yards.
Glad you're here. I really am.
Yeah.
All kidding aside,
Yep.
really am glad you're here.
Yeah, man, thank you.
Hey, Chris.
Glad I'm here too, man.
In a lot of ways, I mean football, but also just the locker room.
Yeah.
Everything we need you.
Thank you, man. Hey, you're excused because you're so big. Yeah, break us down, baby.
Ted's on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Ted's.
I like that.
What's Ted's?
Tight end. Oh.
Tight end domination. Oh, it was.
Well, we are back here on Training Camp Live, presented by Publix. Hope you guys enjoyed that mic'd up with Gronkowski. I know we definitely have, and We just love everything about him. Like I was saying to you in the break that I just want to approach life the way that he does, where everything is entertaining, everything is fun. He and a friend of mine said they felt like he was a football cartoon character, and I loved that. I thought it was
just
such
bigger
a
than
great
life.
description.
It's just exaggerated.
Yes, he's so great. And shameless plug, we put out my first Casey's vlog of the season yesterday, and the very beginning of it features him, and I'm not going to give it away, but it is
funny.
great. It is just 5 seconds of wonderful Gronk attitude.
That
which is wonderful.
that mic'd up was the best one for
Yeah.
me this season. I just love the way every time he catches the ball and he's downfield and he's like lowering his shoulder and bouncing off guys, he starts chuckling. He's like,
Which is so funny. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that would not be my response to being hit by all these people is like
He loved
laughter
it.
and be like, oh, and like the fact that he loves it is just, I think it's so great. And I think that can even be one of the benefits of the fact that he was away from football for a year, that it really does seem like
Yeah, true.
he is just so loving this to be back and playing football. That I think that's a really great sign. Okay, well, let's talk about some of the other takeaways from the scrimmage, particularly the wide receiver position. That's one that has been a really interesting battle to watch in camp. We got Mike Evans. We got Chris Godwin. Yep, we're good. 1 and 2. So now, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6, depending on what coach decides to do at that position. You know, how do we feel like some things are shaking out, and who are some of the guys that may be really impressed in that scrimmage?
well, those highlights from the scrimmage were all approved by the football side, so we can, now that we've shown that, obviously you can see that Tom Brady hit Evans, he hit Godwin. Like I said, there's more in there. He spread the ball around quite a bit, but he also, you saw the one to Scotty Miller where Scotty made sort of a short catch, made a couple guys miss. Scotty, as was mentioned afterwards by Tom Brady and I think Bruce Arians, Scotty Miller was really good.
Yeah.
And that connection that he appears to have forged with Tom Brady looks to be real. So all you can say is that can't hurt him in that battle for that third receiver job. And we've talked a lot about basically the two guys that have separated themselves in that battle are him and Justin Watson. And Justin Watson's done very well too. But Scotty didn't hurt himself, that's for sure. And just take a look at this graphic real quick. You wonder, with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, is there really much to go around for a third
Right.
receiver? In the modern NFL, there is. If you look at this, I looked this up yesterday, the highest number of yards for the third receiver ranked among your yards. So 2 other receivers had more yards. What did the third receiver have? It's all from the last 3 years. You had Adam Humphries with 816 yards after Mike and Chris.
Wow.
And then Brashad last year had 645 after Mike and Chris. Of course, a little bit of asterisk there. A lot of that came after those 2 guys were hurt, but still. And then Adam Humphries again behind Mike and Deshaun Jackson. It's a different NFL these days, and there's enough to go around for a third
Right.
receiver, even in a loaded offense like that. So it's not an unimportant question. And as we've talked before, the 3 receiver set or 11 personnel is now the most common package in the NFL, and that was definitely the case for the Buccaneers last year. You could obviously picture the Bucs using more 12 personnel, more 2 tight end sets with the talent we have there, but there's still probably going to be over 50% of the plays in that 11, and so that guy's going to be on the field a lot. And I've made the point several times that I think Scotty Miller's a good choice for that because he can affect what's going on offense even when the ball's not coming his way by drawing coverage away from Mike and Chris, getting open deep, and if he's also going to be putting up big yards, I mean, he could really make an impact there as that third receiver. I don't think the battle's over, but like I said, he didn't hurt himself on Friday.
I like the way that with that graphic we talked about the idea of it being the third highest amount of yards of the receiver. What would you think about this year? Do you think it would be a wide receiver? Do you think there's a chance it's a tight end? That if you are doing it just by receiving yards, forget the position they play, would you say that the actual third receiver is going to be for sure a receiver? Do you think there's a chance that one of the tight ends could end up in that role? Or is it because there's so many of them, they're going to spread it out so much that might not happen?
I would have said before camp started, I would put my money on the third player with the most yards being a tight end just because of the talent there. But you're right. You do wonder if if Gronk and OJ and Cam are going to split it up a little bit. And I think you might have heard Gronkowski in that mic'd up segment saying he thought he might get 400 or 500 yards, which is a little lower than what I predicted. And he would know better than I would. So if he's your top tight end at 500 yards, there's a very good chance that Scotty or Justin or somebody will be your third guy in the receiving yards. I'm still not sure I'd make that bet yet, but it's certainly seeming more possible at this point.
Yeah, I think that has been something that's so interesting this offseason to look at, man, how many yards, and I'm sure all the people that play fantasy are wondering about all this, right? Is
100%.
which guy is going to be getting, the most yards at any position, and with so many weapons, can any one guy get very much? And I started thinking about the fact that how many yards Mike and Chris got last year, and even if you took their number and divided it in half, projecting out that if they didn't get hurt, especially what they were on pace for.
They were on pace for almost 1,500 each.
Right. So even if you chop both of their yards in half,
which isn't going to happen.
That's still a pretty productive season. And so
Right.
it's just sort of interesting to realize that, man, like there was a lot of yards to go around, between those guys, and now with all those weapons, that even if you take away from some of your top guys, you can still potentially have some people with some big yards.
And we know that Jameis Winston liked to throw the ball to Mike Evans. And who could blame him? Right. And then Chris Godwin became such a threat last year because he played all over the field, was in the slot and not in the slot, and so it was hard not to throw the ball to him as well. But I really think Tom Brady's going to spread the ball around quite a bit. And so, that might mean 1,200 yards for Mike, or 13 for Chris instead of 15. But there's going to be some yards to go around here, that's for sure. And
right. Okay, let's talk about the outside linebacker position. That's another one, a lot like the wide receiver, where you got your two main starters, and then you got sort of a presumptive maybe third, and a lot of guys battling for some of those other positions. What did you feel like you learned from the scrimmage about that position? Were there any guys that particularly stood out or shined? And I know it's hard because just to make everybody know, in the scrimmage, no one was touching the orange jersey. No one was touching the quarterbacks. That was big time.
That's
not
a good
allowed.
way to not make the team.
Yeah, and so for outside linebackers, it's a little bit harder maybe to judge exactly what's going on, but there were still ways for some of those guys to stand out, I feel like.
Yeah, and by the way, there were a couple plays whistled dead for the first team offense when it was decided it was going to be a sack. I remember one play, and this isn't giving anything away because Jason Pierre-Paul is a good football player and a good pass rusher.
Yeah, no one's going to be shocked that he did well.
Yeah, I remember one play where he just went screaming right past Blaine Gabbert, and they just blew the whistle.
Yeah,
so
it's just tag you're it.
So they had some good pass rushes in that game. Yes, I'm glad that Coach Arians brought up Quentin Bell and Cam Gill afterwards when asked if any of the young guys made an impact on special teams and so forth. And because I would have liked to have said, and I wasn't sure if I'd be cleared to say, that Quentin Bell looked like he had a good day. Made some plays on special teams. I saw one on defense as well. That looked really good. And like you said, the presumptive three there is Anthony Nelson, but then you got Bell and Daniels and Divinity and Gill. And somebody mentioned, I think Larry Foote said a week or so ago that it's like 4 or 5 guys fighting for one bone. Quentin Bell certainly didn't hurt himself. And coaches said he's shown good speed out here, good moves. So that's good. And then Cam Gill apparently was flying around too, and we haven't really heard a whole lot about him yet, but he's another guy in the same boat. So it's a lot of guys from small schools who have an obvious set of talents that got him here, speed in particular. And you just have to sort through it. So when you get an opportunity like that and you show up like Quentin Bell did, it's obviously a very good thing for him.
Okay, well, we still have one more segment, and it is the one where we get to your questions. So right now, make sure you head over to YouTube or Facebook to submit those, and we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to give you a look at the shots of the day, and then we'll be back to answer those questions.
We at the trail ride on the floor to the beat. Yeah, they playing my song. Up the road, come we get live stable. And y'all go check my song out on YouTube. It's called Go Ahead and Run Your Mouth. All you gotta do is type in my name, Devin White, and you gonna pull me up. Trail ride song. No one trail ride song in the world.
Let me get it.
Yeah.
I got you. 41, 42, 43. Monday, Tuesday, live. What you singing?
Do you hear that sound? That's the sound of them Valley boys in the cut at the ride. Tell them boys get live. Yeah, we coming through. Everybody better move. Got the brand new Justin boots. How you see it like the flu? Huh? I just seen a big fine man. I tell her, here. You already know why I'm at. I'm at the field. Pull up when you get out. Just say let me in the middle. Ain't no time for being tender. That's your girl. You better get her. Get it, McGee.
It's a shame our team is so shy. I really feel like we just need some more personality. They're just too serious all the time, you know, and
I couldn't hear the sound. Was that the singing one?
It's the singing one, yes. And I love all of these guys, and I love that they love being out there and together. And I think that you can't actually overstate the importance of that. Like, a lot of times we focus so much on the X's and O's, but the fact that they have fun together, they enjoy each other, they build that chemistry, it really is important.
I think part of that is it's a very young team.
Yes.
This is one of the youngest teams in the NFL right now.
They still got a lot of energy, unlike us old curmudgeonly people, you know. All right, we are going to be taking your Facebook questions and YouTube questions right now. So if you're not already watching one of those two, head on over there if you have a question to submit for us. Real quick before I start reading some of those, we did see that the media had tweeted out that Ronald Jones was practicing. They're way over on a far field, so it's a little hard for us to see the numbers and see who's out there right now. So we did see that it was tweeted out by the media that he is practicing, so I feel like that's a great sign.
Yeah, obviously. So we give a little assist to the media on that one. Like you said, we start the show when they start practice, and they're far away, so we couldn't have found it out ourselves until after the show. So thanks to the media for helping us with that one. But that's good news.
There you go. Look at us. Our camera found him over there. Way to go to our production team.
You don't like to see a running back with his foot wrapped after a game.
No. They kind of need those feet.
So obviously it wasn't a big deal, and that's really, really good news.
Yes.
He looked good. You know, LaShawn McCoy, they showed a clip from him, too, in that game or scrimmage highlights, and so we could talk about that. He made a really nice run around the end. He looks like he's got no problem still turning on the Jets.
Yeah, which is super exciting to hear for sure. All right, our first question. Quentin asked, and not Quentin Bell.
I guess not. One. I think he's busy right now.
He's a little busy right now. Quentin asked, how does Sean Murphy Bunting look?
Oh, they look good. All those young DBs are playing well, and they look good in the scrimmage. The coverage is good. I remember one play where Sean Murphy Bunting was, and it was in that highlight package. You could see him in run support, which is very, very important. If you're the nickel, you have to be good. You have to be able to stand up against the run, and that's the thing like Rondé Barber was always very good at. And if he's going to be playing in there, and he's certainly definitely one of the candidates to do so, he's going to need to be stout against the run. So to see that happen was good news.
Okay, and our next question was from Rick, and he said, besides the first game, what other games are you looking forward to on the season?
Well, I don't know how you can start anywhere but the Kansas City Chiefs.
I was hoping you weren't going to answer it, so
you could have that one? All right, you can have that one. Talk about that one, Casey.
I mean, I don't even know that I need to talk about it. I mean, when you're going against this defending Super Bowl champs and at home, I mean, that's pretty crazy. And to watch, we talked about quarterback battles. As much as we're excited to watch Brady against Breeze, you got to be excited to watch Brady against Mahomes.
Yeah, because it's different generations.
It really is.
I mean, Brady's obviously the GOAT, and he's been the best quarterback of the last 20 years, but I don't think anybody would pick anybody other than Patrick Mahomes unless you really believe Lamar Jackson's going to be able to keep doing what he's doing as the guy that's most likely to be the best quarterback for the next 20 years.
Yeah, the heir apparent coming up behind. And I love that because you always hear about people saying that whenever there is a just dominant star of a sport and, the whole like, oh, who's next? Who's going to be after the next, people, who's the next LeBron, the next whoever. And so to get to watch Tom Brady out there going against the guy that everybody has said is that next young guy coming up, I mean, that's a great story.
Yeah, I got a good little thing from one of our interviews in the last couple of days. Who has caught passes over the last 2 years from both Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady?
LaShawn McCoy.
So I thought that was a very astute question by one of our media members. They asked him about that, comparisons, and LaShawn McCoy's a really good interview, by the way.
Yeah.
And he really gave a very thoughtful answer to it. And part of what he said was, those are the only two guys that he's really worked with that kind of will look one way and then throw the ball somewhere else. Because he said there was a play where he thought Tom was going to throw to him because he was open and Tom was looking right at him, and he looked at him, but he threw the ball to Gronk. and LaShawn was like, what?
Yeah.
And apparently he does that from time to time, and Patrick Mahomes is kind of famous for that no-look pass.
Yeah, the no-look pass, yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of people doing that. So you got, what is Patrick Mahomes, 23 years old maybe?
Yeah.
And then you got 43-year-old Tom Brady, and both of them are the guys that can do that sort of look one way and throw another way thing, which has to be maddening for defensive players because they do a lot of what the quarterback's eyes are doing.
And it's going to keep your offensive players on their toes.
That's
They got to
right.
always assume the ball could be coming to them. Okay, Jermaine said with JPP getting to start the regular season this year, do you think he and Shaq could potentially have 10-plus sacks?
Yeah, and that's happened before. It's not crazy. I remember the year that Warren Sapp set the record, which Shaq broke last year at 16.5 sacks. I think it was either 2000 or 2001. I think it was 2000. Marcus Jones also had 13 sacks that year, which would have tied the record if Sapp hadn't broken it. So it's not crazy to think you have an inside guy and an outside guy. Now, in this case, you're talking about two outside guys getting, and I don't know. I think there's going to be more attention paid to those guys, and that's going to open up some opportunities for Sue and Vita Vea, and Ndamukong Suh has actually said that he thinks it could flip a little bit, and that could create opportunities for them inside. Whereas last year they were eating up all the double teams and helping out the outside guys. But who do you bet against getting 10 sacks? Certainly not Shaq, and certainly not JPP when he's got 16 games, because the last time he had 16 games, he had 12.5 sacks for the Bucs. So it's certainly possible.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, Byron asked, do you think we will have another live game scrimmage before week 1?
Well,
it would have to be this week.
It would be Friday, probably. Yeah. That's an open question right now, and I think that was definitely the original plan, because Bruce talked about having 2 of those. But during his post-game or post-scrimmage Zoom call, he said he wasn't sure they were going to need another one. And that might be somewhat having to do with the fact that the offense looked pretty sharp. And then also he got to do a lot of situations that he didn't know they were going to get to all of them. So he even canceled a 2-minute drill at the end of the game they were going to do, because they got a 2-minute drill in before the first halftime. But they got the coming out from the 2-yard line. They got the goal line going in. They got a lot of third down work. So he got a lot of situational stuff done. And so then you start, again, doing the odds in your head, weighing the pros and the cons. And might we get somebody hurt 9 days before our first game? Is it worth it? I think he's probably going through that round now, deciding whether it's not it's worth it, because he definitely was saying he wasn't 100% sure they were going to have another one.
Okay, and the next question was, did the defense or the offense look sharper in the scrimmage?
I'm going to sound like that guy that refuses to say anything bad, right? But our first-team offense couldn't have looked a whole lot better, but our first-team defense really didn't give up much either. I guess you'd have to go with the offense, simply because 98-yard drives don't happen very often, and that was the biggest takeaway from the whole thing. But the defense, the first-team defense was totally fine.
We had a question asking if the scrimmage solidified any O-line starters. We're not really allowed to report on, who's playing with 1s versus 2s and all that stuff. But overall, did you feel like the O-line, how did you feel like they looked in the scrimmage? And we can just talk about that sort of in general, but we unfortunately can't talk about the exact position groupings and who's playing with who.
But I think that's a good point. There was definitely a difference. It was quite obvious. There was definitely a difference of how long Tom Brady had to throw the ball and how long Blaine Gabbert had to throw the ball when he was with the second team against the first team defense. So I would say it looked like the offensive line held up very well. They obviously were able to help Ronald Jones punch it in there in the end, which is a big point of emphasis for Coach Arians. It's something he didn't like from a goal line drill out here a few days ago. The fact that they succeeded is a good thing for that offensive line. I did not see any time when it looked like Tom Brady was under any danger of being sacked. Of course, he handles a lot of that by getting rid of the ball quickly, but I would say the offensive line had a perfectly good performance. But like you said, we really can't report on who's playing where. Okay,
and we'll close with, we got 2. We can end with these 2. I like both of these. Andrew asked, do you think anyone will beat or get near Shaq's sack record?
No.
That was easy. I figured that would be.
There's been like, so to beat Shaq's record, you have to get 20?
Yeah.
That's only happened 12 times since the sack became an official statistic. And
I'm actually surprised it's happened that many times.
Yeah, and J.J. Watt's the only guy that's done it twice.
Wow.
You got names on there like a DeMarcus Ware, guys that are awesome pass rushers that you can count on getting 10 to 15, and then 1 year they just go nuts and everything works out right and they get 20. That just everything doesn't fall right for that to happen most times, and I don't think that will happen again. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, if you got between 10 and 15 sacks out of Shaq,
we will take that.
It would be a great follow-up to his incredible first season here.
I agree. All right, and then this is the one we'll close with. Rodney asked, does it look like the secondary has taken another step to improve from last year?
Well, that's the storyline, and that's what you want to believe. They certainly don't look like they've lost any momentum. I don't think we're going to be able to tell if they've taken that step until we get to real games. The main thing, of course, as has been harped on over and over again, is let's turn that league-leading number of passes defensed into more interceptions, and that's the next step for them. Presuming we say they don't regress from where they were in the last 8 games last year, that's already very good. Now you start adding in more splash plays, more interceptions. That's the next step, and we just have to wait and see. But I certainly think it's likely.
Okay, well, that is going to do it for us on this edition of Training Camp Live presented by Publix. Thanks to all of you guys for being with us. Thanks for those great questions. We only have 2 more of these, tomorrow morning and Tuesday morning, and that is going to be it. So make sure if you have any of those questions you want to get in, that you get them in tomorrow or Tuesday morning. Here's our final schedule out of our 14 days that we've been doing this show. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow.